Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Syria pushes for dialogue with the opposition as fighting intensifies. New Israeli regulation blocks Palestinians and migrant workers from seeking justice. And Iraqis in Basra demand the expulsion of Western security contractors. Mosaic, world news from the Middle East, begins now. The defected Syrian Prime Minister Riyad Hijab confirmed during a news conference held in the Jordanian capital Amman today that the Syrian regime controls only 30% of the country and that the Syrian army is, quote, cracking from the inside.
I confirm to you, through my experiences and the position I held, that the regime is collapsing morally, financially, and economically, and is cracking militarily. The army is not effectively controlling more than 30% of the Syrian territories. So may the revolution continue with its civilized approach to fulfill its bright image through maintaining the unity of the country and its coherent social fabric, and through preserving the state's institutions, its vital facilities and infrastructure, which we all built with hard work and our children's blood. As for the factions of the opposition abroad, they are invited today more than ever, to unite their efforts and refute the accusations of being fragmented and fractured. So differences in views do not eliminate a united goal.
The National Coordination Committee for the Forces of Democratic Change in Syria, which is a coalition of local opposition figures, announced an initiative to stop the violence and bring about democratic change to Syria. In addition, Buthaina Shaban, the Syrian president's advisor, is holding consultations in China on the crisis in her country, as Beijing is considering holding talks between the government and the opposition on its soil.
From the
east to the west, everyone is talking about the need to put an end to the bloody conflict in Syria. But there is no end in sight, according to several indicators and the facts on the ground. In Washington, which is keen to unite the fronts of the opposition to President Bashar al-Assad, U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta said that implementing a no-fly zone in Syria is one of the options available to confront the changing events there, but it is not on the front burner at the moment.
We have planned for a number of contingencies that could take place, and one of those possible contingencies is developing a no-fly zone. But we've also pointed out the difficulties in being able to implement it. What I want to say is that any decision President Obama takes, we will prepare and work on implementing.
The statements made by the American official come despite increasing calls by the Syrian opposition for assistance in confronting the escalating aerial attacks by the Syrian forces. But Panetta expressed confidence that if it were up to his country to intervene, it would do so successfully. Panetta added that a decision of this magnitude must be preceded by a major policy decision. To the east, and issued at the same time as Panetta's statements, the Iranian response was opposition. Iran also warned of the dangers of moving toward imposing a no-fly zone in Syria.
This conspiracy that we are hearing about would pave the way to an armed conflict through imposing a no-fly zone. For this reason, countries in the area must be cautious of the outcome of this American Zionist initiative.
In a related development, which aims to exclude such an option, Chinese officials said that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's advisor, Buthaina Shaban, is discussing different Chinese ideas in Beijing with the aim of finding a solution to the Syrian crisis. The officials clarified that China is considering inviting members of the Syrian opposition next, but the Syrian embassy in Beijing refused to comment on the visit by President Assad's advisor. This comes as the Syrian crisis is expected to dominate the agenda of the Islamic summit tonight in the holy city of Mecca.
Open
with another political shakeup in the government, in the early hours of this morning, the Prime Minister's office announced that Kadima MK Avi Dichter had been chosen to become the new Minister for Homefront Defense, replacing outgoing Minister Matan Vilnai, who is set to take over as Israel's ambassador to China. The appointment has both security and political implications. IBA's Eli Wagelander joins us now with more. Eli?
Thank you, Laura. Amid heightened public debate over a possible strike in Iran, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu named Avi Dichter, a former internal security minister and a former head of the Shin Bet, as the country's new Homefront command minister. The 59-year-old Dichter, the son of Holocaust survivors, has already presented Knesset Speaker Reuven Rivlin with his letter of resignation this morning and is scheduled to be appointed minister on Thursday when the resignation takes effect. Dichter will join the government as an independent and will not be affiliated with any political party. Dichter was offered the post at a meeting with Defense Minister Ehud Barak yesterday and then met late last night with Netanyahu to discuss the transition. Dichter explained his decision on his Facebook page, saying that when he decided to take the position, quote, personal and partisan considerations were edged aside, and I've chosen to serve the state the best way I can. And he concluded his post by saying, country first, me second. Said Netanyahu this morning, 40 years ago we served together in the elite IDF Sayeret Matkal unit. He is very praiseworthy, and now he will have an important responsibility to contribute to his life's mission, the defense of the State of Israel. Now, there's nothing unusual about a member of Knesset taking leave of their Knesset seat to take up a cabinet position, but what's different here is not only that Dichter is leaving the main opposition party, but that he was part of a secret late-night negotiations just 3 weeks ago to recruit Kadima members to join Likud. Members of Kadima, a party already in freefall according to the latest polls, are none too happy about today's developments. The Kadima statement released today said, Avi Dichter erred when he jeopardized his reputation and defected for a minor and powerless position in a cynical and shameless government. MK Yisrael Hasson said that, quote, once again, Netanyahu has crossed the boundaries of political disgust, becoming a master of political manipulations. Dichter himself stressed that his lead in Kadima was not personal and is not aimed at undermining Shaul Mofaz's leadership. Replacing Dichter in Kadima will be Ahmed Daba, a leading party activist and ally of Chairman Shaul Mofaz.
Egypt today temporarily reopened the Rafah terminal, letting Palestinians cross out of Gaza for the first time since last week's attack that killed 18 border policemen. The crossing will be opened for 3 days only and just for humanitarian cases. Cairo has accused the Palestinians of aiding the terrorists in the Sinai attack, which was also seen as a blow to Hamas, who had hoped to establish better ties with Egypt's new Muslim Brotherhood-led government. Hamas has said it shut down its smuggling tunnels to show Egypt that it is helping with their security crackdown. The tunnels are a major source of revenue for Hamas. The Kerem Shalom crossing at the Israeli border with the Hamas-run enclave was reopened a day after the attack and has been carrying on as normal, with some 300 trucks entering daily. A special ceremony was held at Ben Gurion International Airport this morning to welcome 350 new immigrants from North America. Prime Minister Netanyahu, Jewish Agency Chairman Natan Sharansky, and Major General Orna Barbivai, who heads the Army's Manpower Directorate, were among those on hand to greet the newcomers, who included 5 sets of twins and 2 sets of triplets. A record-breaking number of 127 young American and Canadian immigrants among the group plan to enlist in the IDF. Today's special charter flight was organized by Nefesh B'Nefesh in cooperation with the Jewish Agency, the Jewish National Fund, the Friends of the IDF Group, and the Green Tzabar program devoted to soldiers who come to Israel without their families. Nearly 5,000 American, Canadian, and British Jews are expected to make Aliyah by the end of this year, which marks the 10th anniversary of the Nefesh B'Nefesh organization.
Israeli Justice Minister Yaakov Neiman proposed a legal amendment that would bar those who do not have Israeli citizenship from filing a lawsuit in Israeli courts.
The amendment is expected to hurt illegal immigrants in Israel and Palestinians in the occupied West Bank who do not have a Palestinian passport or any other foreign passport.
The amendment was met with wide-scale criticism by rights and legal associations in Israel.
The Israeli Justice Minister's intentions do not seem compatible with the concepts of justice and fairness. The legal amendment he is proposing will deprive all those who do not have Israeli citizenship or foreign citizenship from filing lawsuits in Israeli civil courts. This would prevent many Palestinians from being able to sue the occupation army over the arbitrary measures it uses against them, leading to criticism by many rights organizations in Israel. They considered the amendment to be a blatant violation of a basic right of many vulnerable groups.
This is not apartheid, it's worse. Because in the apartheid system, there's a first-class citizen and a second-class citizen. But what the Justice Minister is suggesting is a third-class citizen who's completely deprived of all human rights.
In any case, the Palestinians are denied compensation for their properties if they are damaged during a military operation. The proposed change targets a vulnerable group of Palestinians that is estimated at thousands. They are those who Israel refused to register as Palestinian citizens, and they do not hold a Palestinian or foreign passport. This group is not able to receive compensation for a demolished home or confiscated land, or compensation for being mistreated by the forces of the occupation, or even for the settlers infringing on their properties.
Since 2000, Israel banned reunification, and there is a number of people, especially in the West Bank, who do not have identification cards and passports, so they are not able to go to Israel's civil courts to file a lawsuit to ask for compensation.
A substantial share of the amendment is devoted to African migrants. It also bars them from filing lawsuits against their Israeli employers if a work conflict erupts, or to file a lawsuit because of a traffic accident, or even object to their deportation procedure from Israel. The Israeli Justice Minister's decision exemplifies a right-wing government that targets Palestinians and minorities and seeks to seize from them what it considers to be excessive civil and legal rights. It also prevents them from seeking justice in the face of this government's limitless, racist policies. Elias Karam, Al Jazeera, West Jerusalem.
In the southern Iraqi province of Basra, Iraqi officials and citizens expressed concern over the presence of U.S. and British security contractors in the province. The local government described security companies as an extension of the occupation and held them responsible for a series of recent bombings witnessed in Basra.
Despite the growing capabilities of the Iraqi security agencies in the past few years, which has helped stabilize security across broad areas, the presence of foreign security contractors, notably U.S. and British companies, is still causing concern among both officials and citizens.
These companies, especially those that are funded by the U.S. and Britain, are posing a great danger to Iraq. The U.S. announced that it withdrew from Iraq. However, it re-entered Iraq from another window through commercial and security companies.
Local authorities accuse these companies of being behind the recent terrorist bombings that targeted several markets across Basra with the aim of striking at trade activities in the city in the service of the interests of certain neighboring Arab countries, amid fears that the city is turning into a powerful economic hub.
We have information confirming that some of these companies were involved in a series of terrorist acts that targeted certain areas in a bid to destabilize the economic situation.
The local government in Basra said the presence of foreign security contractors is part of an international protocol, which stipulates that oil and energy investment companies must be accompanied by security contractors. It stresses that such firms adhere to strict regulations.
If it is an international protocol for oil companies to be accompanied by private security companies, then we cannot go against the central government. But we are in favor of verifying the identities of the workers and inspecting these vehicles.
Popular parties call for relying on army and security forces instead and demand a quick end to the mandate of these companies since they represent a major security gap.
There are security companies that may be Israeli or British security companies and could be partly responsible for the deteriorating security situation. I heard one of the security leaders say that some of the security companies operate like militias.
Iraqis retain painful memories from their experiences with foreign security companies. The memory of the Blackwater massacre remains on the minds of many. In addition, these companies' constant roaming the streets of Iraqi cities takes citizens right back to the unbelievable years of the occupation. Naam Abdul Razak, Al Alam, Al Basra.
Our top story: in Myanmar, violence against the country's minority Muslims is on the rise. Houses and buildings have been set on fire. An unspecified number of people have been killed. Security forces, along with Buddhist extremists, are being blamed for the brutality against the Muslims. Press TV's correspondent Johnny Miller, who's just returned from Myanmar's Arakan region, has this report.
Parts of Myanmar's Rakhine province resemble a war zone. Just weeks ago, this used to be a bustling community of 1- and 2-story buildings.
Nearly 60,000 Muslims used to live in this area, but as you can see, it is now a wasteland. First of all burnt down, and then the military came to clear the rest away. Nothing remains.
There were shops, schools, and at least 5 mosques. Impossible now to find their exact location. Nearby a refugee camp for Rohingya Muslims, there is a heavy army and police presence. Some young Rohingya men take me into a courtyard. They face arrest if they're seen talking to me.
We saw some of the police and police force are combined with the Rakhine communities. At the beginning of the setting fire, first the police force shoot the gun, and then the Rakhine communities tried to set fire. When the Muslim communities tried to stop fire, at that time the police force started to shoot gun to the Muslim communities.
At a Rakhine Buddhist refugee camp on the other side of town, this man lays the blame on the Muslims. It was they who started the violence, he says. At this camp, there were around 2,300 refugees. Now there are only 385, although I only saw around 30. The rest have been able to return to their villages, their homes still intact. In the town of Sitwe, the streets are empty. A curfew is in place. I asked this man if the curfew and the military presence had helped stop the violence. He said it had, but if the Muslims returned, the violence would start again.
Is this state-sponsored ethnic cleansing?
Ethnic cleansing, yeah. They don't want to us to mix with them, to live together with them. So just they are trying to kick out us from Myanmar.
The Rakhine or the government?
And both of them.
Tens of thousands of Rohingya Muslims are now homeless, unwanted by their former neighbors and persecuted by the Burmese government. These people now have nowhere to go. Johnny Miller, Press TV, Rakhine Province, Myanmar.
Yemen's elite Republican Guard attacked the Defense Ministry headquarters in the capital, Sana'a. The Republican Guard remains loyal to the former Yemeni ruler, Ali Abdullah Saleh, and is led by his son, Ahmed. Witnesses say Ahmed's forces laid siege to the Defense Ministry before attacking it with machine guns and rocket-propelled grenades. The attack comes a week after President Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi ordered the restructuring of the army. The situation remains tense in the Sinai Peninsula following the recent clashes between Egyptian security forces and militants. Once again, the two sides face off in the north of the area. No word on possible casualties as of yet. Similar clashes took place on Monday after armed men attacked a checkpoint in Al Arish city. Earlier this month, militants stormed a police station in Sinai and killed 16 Egyptian border guards. Egyptian forces have been on alert since then. Hundreds of military troops have been deployed to the region to be on guard for any possible attack.
With the attendance of officials and the people, crowds of Palestinians held a funeral procession for Ramzi Shaheen and Anis Shukri Khalil from the village of Ain Arik in the city of Ramallah. The funeral was held after the Israeli occupation authorities handed over their remains as part of the last transfer of remains of the martyrs of Al-Arqam cemetery. Their burial has been delayed until their identities were confirmed with a DNA test.
We have waited for this moment for 21 years, right? So as sad as we feel, let us be happy that their remains are returned to Ain Arik.
With these words, Salim Khila, the coordinator of the national campaign to retrieve the bodies of the martyrs, spoke to the mothers of martyrs Ramzi Shaheen and Anis Shukri Khalil from the village of Ain Arik, west of Ramallah city. The remains were carried over the people's shoulders as they were taken back to the place of their birth.
They were martyred together, and on November 11, 1991, Israel denied that it had their bodies and confiscated them in the worst conditions. Today, the entire Palestinian nation retrieves the remains of Ramzi Shaheen and Anis Shukri Khalil, and we celebrate them as national heroes.
The official procession was launched from the Palestinian medical complex in Ramallah. The remains of the two martyrs that were retrieved from Al-Arqam cemetery were wrapped in the Palestinian flag after having been just a number for years. Prayers for Anis Khalil were held at the Ain Arik Al-Omri Mosque, and he was buried in the Muslim cemetery. Meanwhile, the procession bidding martyr Ramzi Shaheen farewell was held at the Virgin Mary Transfiguration Greek Orthodox Church.
This is proof of the unity of the Arab Palestinian people with all of its national and Muslim facets. So the symbolic events witnessed today express that our struggle, Muslims and Christians, is one. We are fighting for a just issue. We struggle together for independence and the establishment of a state of Palestine with Jerusalem as its capital.
The village of Ain Arik was gloomy as it received its children. Sadness prevailed years after the martyrdom of Ramzi and Anis. And as they embodied unity and brotherhood in resisting the occupier, they embodied unity as they brought Muslims and Christians together in one funeral under the sky of Palestine. Shaheen and Khalil were martyred in 1991 while participating in Al-Naqab operation. The remains had been unburied since the last transfer of martyrs, awaiting identification through necessary tests. They went out 21 years ago to retrieve this land and the dignity of its residents. Today they returned together to this land that refused to allow their burial outside of its territories. From the village of Ain Arik, west of Ramallah, Haroum Amaira, Palestine TV. As during every Ramadan, the Adams Mosque, one of the largest in the U.S. capital, Washington, held its annual iftar. In attendance were followers of the other monotheistic religions, American government officials, and police officers. The event was an opportunity to introduce the guests to the true face of Islam and its universal values, in addition to the customs of the holy month. Nasser Abu Diab reports from Washington.
As Muslims prayed, guests sat on the sidelines, observing with interest and learning about Islam up close during an inclusive night of Ramadan. It was hosted by Adams Mosque in the Washington area, inviting guests from the various religions to partake in the iftar.
What this does, it shows...
This night proves that the U.S. is a place where good people can come together and share food, which is evidence that we are all alike, and there is no difference between us.
This annual Ramadan event is part of the Interfaith Dialogue initiative that the mosque organizes, and whose importance has grown after the 9/11 events. Christian and Jewish representatives from the area are invited to iftar, in addition to a number of politicians and representatives of the American security establishment. The goal is rapprochement and building trust.
It's very important to always have a lasting and good relationship between American security agencies and the Muslim communities, and to share with them occasions like this, because in a time of need we can assist each other and work together more effectively.
The evening started by raising the flag and honoring the scouts of the mosque. It was followed by a celebration during which a number of guests confirmed the integration of Muslims into American society, saying Muslims are an inseparable part of it. They also rejected all forms of discrimination Muslims may be subjected to.
There's a large number of elected officials from this area in particular, in Virginia and in this district specifically, who participated in the gathering. They care a lot about celebrating with the Muslim community, which is clear evidence that the Muslim community has an effect on the American society in general.
After the call to prayer and as the time to feast neared, the attendants sat next to each other, exchanging conversation and sharing food. It was a rare scene that showcased the spirit of coexistence and integration. A Ramadan tent brought together different segments of the American society with its various religions. They were introduced to the true face of Islam during the month of Ramadan, the month of communication and forgiveness. And with that, they contributed to bridging gaps and building closer ties.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Wincoat Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic. Airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories, world news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.